Hello and welcome to a live Kerfefe break on Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. This is the channel where we attempt to pull apart, better understand social justice ideology, which was my old belief system for 20 years. We have a series of interviews that are probably the best series to watch if you're interested in that and better understanding woke or social justice. Mondays and Fridays, we do this live show where we just talk about different topics that might be in the news or things we're interested in. Sometimes we have co-hosts or guests. I will announce now, I'm very excited. I've talked with him before, both on his channel, my old channel, but Monday will be the first time he's been here on Deprogrammed, my new channel. I'm very excited to host Josh Slocum from the podcast Disaffected. And we're going to be taking a look at social justice or woke through the lens of cluster B personality disorders, which of course is his specialty. So that's going to be a live episode on Monday during our normal Kerfefe break time. So it's going to be at 1:00 Central on Monday. Josh Slocum from Disaffected. I've got to get some art made for it so we can promote that one. But I'm really excited to talk to him. So that'll be Monday. Please come if you have questions. That one will be live. That interview's live, so you can ask them in real time, not like the pre-recorded ones that I'm usually putting out. So today I want to talk about anthropology. Well, first I should say, if you like Deprogrammed, if you've been here for a while and you want to support the show, you can do so by hitting like on this video. It helps our algorithm here at YouTube. You can also leave a comment after the video is over, or even now, I think it lets you leave a comment. And somebody even left one last week that said, here's a comment for the algorithm. I wonder if they filtered those out yet. They take them out of the algorithm. The AI is probably smart enough to do that. But you can leave a comment if you have something to say. Even if you hate the show, you can leave a comment. It will help the algorithm. So I appreciate it. And if you have been here for a while and you want to help support the show financially, we have a goal of eventually, some of you who are long timers know, eventually being able to do this full time with Mystery Chris. Maybe not every series of Mystery Chris, but having him work on a lot of stuff with us and comedy stuff. And so if you want to be a part of that, supporting that, you can do so, I think, for as little as $1 a month here at YouTube, Locals, Patreon, or Subscribestar. I think that's it. That's my plug. There we go. Okay. So today I want to talk about anthropology. Some of you may know, others may not, but my major was actually biological anthropology and anatomy. I went to Duke University. I did a certificate in primatology. So I was a BAA major, but my focus was primates, primatology. And I did half of my last year in Tanzania studying colobus monkeys. And I really thought I was going to be working in primatology or anthropology of some sort for the rest of my life. However, I got derailed in part because of my minor, which was women's studies. And I got deep into that's how I entered into the social justice religion, the social justice faith, was because at that time in the late 90s, I graduated in 2000. So I'm aging myself a bit here, telling on myself. But at that time, social justice, this belief system, this faith of mine was fully in the humanities at so-called elite colleges like Duke. So it was in my women's studies minor, of course. Women's studies, of course, I mentioned this quite a bit because I think it's hilarious. Woke has progressed so far that women's studies is now considered offensive. They call it gender studies now, but back then it was a women's studies minor. And as part of that women's studies minor, I took classes not just in women's studies, but in critical race theory, queer theory, and we read a lot of Marxist thinkers. A lot of it was explicitly rooted in Marxism, which they will argue today. They argue that's not the case. It has nothing to do with Marxism. I believe two things to be true: that it both has roots in Marxism, and that whether or not you believe that point, you can compare it to Marxism to help to understand it better. So even if you don't agree with the first point, the second point is true. It is easily compared to Marxism. Marxism, of course, being about how there are different. It's a way of viewing the world that says, oh, the best way to view the world is competition between class groups for wealth, and if we make everybody equal in terms of wealth, then the world will be great and we'll be in this utopia. So we need to forcibly take wealth and the means of production from some people and give it to other people. That was Marxism in a nutshell for dummies. That's the easy. Not really that anybody's a dummy who's listening. I'm just saying that's the popular brand of books, right? To distill something down into its simple form. So social justice is similar, except it says the best way to view the world is as a competition for power among identity groups. And that some identity groups are oppressed and some are oppressors. It uses that same oppressor oppressed language that Marxism uses. And so they say in order to reach equality, we need to take power from some groups and give it to other groups. Well, how do you do that? You treat people differently based on which of these identity groups they're in. You treat them differently. You say, well, you can't have these opportunities over here because you're in one of the oppressor groups. And you over here, because you're in an oppressed group, we're going to give you privileges that the oppressors don't have, so we can try and balance things and make things equal. So it necessarily means it turns us into racist and sexist. We have to treat people differently on the basis of race and sex in order to reach some perceived equality. The ends justify the means kind of thinking, which it took me 20 years, but I finally got out of that crap. Took me 2 decades. Some people who were never woke, they like to laugh at that, make fun of that. I don't care. I'm happy to admit it, because I think it gives people hope. I hear from parents all the time who are like, my child has been pulled into this woke stuff in college, and, or my spouse or my girlfriend, things like that. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get them back. And I just say to them, there's no magic cure, unfortunately, where you can just say, read this, and they wake up. It's a number of things I think that have to happen, and psychological things, but it can still happen. I was in it for 20 years. So that's why I tell people about that. Anyway, we're getting a little far field into my story, but that was a little of my background and why I'm really interested in this particular story, this anthropology story. When I was at Duke and I got infected with social justice or woke ideology, whatever you want to call it today, identity Marxism, some people call it. I acquired it I found it in the humanities. I picked it up in my minor in women's studies in the classes I was taking for that. And it completely changed the way I thought about the world. Of course it would. It's a belief system, although I didn't realize that at the time. It's a religion, although I didn't realize that at the time. It changed the way I thought about the world. It changed my priorities. It even played a big part in me deciding not to pursue anthropology after I graduated, because I didn't feel like it was very important anymore. It's not important when there's all this oppression happening, around the world, this sex-based and race-based oppression, and I need to be a little activist that learns how to, heal the world and fix the world. Duke turned me into an activist, whether or not that was the intention. It was certainly the intention of the activists who had infiltrated the fields like women's studies, or, the fields that I was dipping my toe in with my minor. Anyway, at the time, none of this stuff was in the hard sciences. I'm actually blessed because I was at college at a time when it wasn't in the hard sciences. It wasn't in any of the classes I was taking for my major, which was biological anthropology and anatomy, primatology. There was no woke bullshit in it at the time. Again, this was the late 90s. And it was blessedly free of all this crap. The sciences, it's rooted in empirical truth, the search for truth. And they don't play with this nonsense. And what's weird is because social justice does such a good job of disguising itself and trying to disguise itself as whatever is going to be useful in the situation. So it will disguise itself as science or science-y if it needs to get into the hard sciences. But it's a belief system, it's a religion. And you would think that the hard sciences, which make a big deal about, oh, we're science, we're not about religion or faith over here, we're about empirical evidence. You would think that they would be immune to this, but they're not. Because the people in these fields are human, and they are just as easy to manipulate psychologically when it comes to things like, well, you don't want to be racist, do you? You don't want to be sexist, do you? This is a religion that plays on those fears that people have of being called something awful that they're not. And so over time, in the over 20 years since I graduated, it has seeped into the hard sciences, into math, into chemistry, into anthropology. And that's so concerning. I know I made light of it in the artwork for today. I had a picture of an orangutan in a multicolored wig. Just funny. I'm a person who believes you have to laugh at the chaos that you're in. Otherwise, how do you survive it, right? Like joy and laughter, that's part of it. Also, it's a great tool, mocking the absurd, pointing out that the emperor has no clothes. So I do believe in laughing about this stuff, but also being very serious when it's necessary and looking at things soberly. And it is devastating the degree to which this faith, this social justice faith, this witch doctor bullshit based on identity groups and privileging some groups and so that we can all reach equality. It's absurd, and it is alarming that it has moved into the hard sciences. You know, that says a lot about the state that we're in as a culture currently, the state of academia, our institutions. Everything's falling apart for this to have moved into hard sciences. So give it up for my mod, Pirate Tomsky, in the chat, who just made a little joke about the orangutan and the wig and said, I thought that was you without makeup, Keri Smith. By the way, I want to curse your name, Pirate Tomsky, because you got me into the old show, my husband and I into the old show Deadwood, and we just finished it and learned that they preemptively canceled it only 3 seasons in, and now we're devastated, and our outrage and our grief is like 15 years late because we were watching the show so late. But it was actually, in all seriousness, it's an excellent show. We haven't seen the movie yet, the follow-up movie they did to try to wrap things up. We're gonna watch that, but that was a great show. Anyway, hello, pirate. Twee Girl in the chat says, woke also believes that subjective feelings are objective facts. Yes, which is not science. It's science-y though, right? So let's pull up. What am I talking about? What am I talking about? Social justice infiltrating anthropology and anthropology going woke. Well, first of all, I want to plug Colin Wright, who is a friend of the show. He's been on before. A scientist I got to interview about gender and sex, and he has here. Let me show you. He has a Substack called Reality's Last Stand, which is it's also the name of his channel, and he's been covering this story quite extensively. Here's his Substack. So we're going to be reading some of the stuff he said about it and things that a few other people have said about it. And we're going to look at their actual announcement, the Anthropological Association of America. But so here's his article from Reality's Last Stand. It's called No Sex Please, We're Anthropologists. And the subtitle is The American Anthropological Association and the Canadian Anthropology Society cancel a panel discussion on why biological sex is important in anthropology. In science, it's important. So I'll just read the beginning of this one because you have to have a paid subscription, which I should do. His writing is totally worth it. I apologize. I don't have it right now, but here, let me just drop this in the chat for anybody who's interested. You can check out his article, but let me read the beginning. Yesterday, the American Anthropological Association and the Canadian Anthropology Society announced the cancellation of a panel discussion titled "Let's Talk About Sex, Baby: Why Biological Sex Remains a Necessary Analytic Category in Anthropology," which is originally scheduled to be part of their annual conference in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, from November 15th to the 19th. The panel was set to feature 6 female scientists specializing in anthropology and biology, and aimed to address the increasing denial of biological sex as a valid and relevant category in both biology and anthropology. The distinction or lack thereof between biological sex and gender roles has long been a point of contention within anthropology. However, the refusal to recognize sex as a real and pertinent biological variable is a much more recent phenomenon. Eager to facilitate an open discussion on this contentious issue and to entertain diverse perspectives from the anthropology community, the organizers considered the conference an optimal venue for a constructive academic dialogue. Accepted on July 13th without contention, the Let's Talk About Sex panel was to be featured alongside other panels and talks exploring various anthropological topics, alongside more politically oriented talks. Look at this. Look at some of the other approved panels which have not been canceled. Trans Latinx methodologies. Okay. It's already in there, dude. It's already in anthropology. Here's another one. Exploring activist anthropology. Here's another one. Reimagining anthropology as restorative justice. These are all woke nonsense panels. Okay, so if you want to read the rest of this, I highly recommend you check out Colin Wright on Twitter or here at his Substack, Reality's Last Stand. We're going to look at some of his tweets. He was the first person I saw tweeting about this. But let's look at their statement. So as you can surmise, they decided they're going to cancel the panel. Because of why? Because of woke activists, probably both inside and outside the association, pressuring them to do so. So here we go. This is the statement on their website. The American Anthropological Association. I'll just make this a little larger. No place for transphobia in anthropology. This is a made-up word. What does that even mean? That's not a scientific word. It means different things to different people depending on how they say it, and it's currently used as a weapon against anybody who wants to talk about biological realities like biological sex. It's even used against trans people who identify as trans, people who've had surgery or gone on hormones to try and present as the opposite sex, but who disagree with this crap and who obviously acknowledge biological sex. People like Sarah Higdon, who's been on this channel, they get called transphobes, trans people. So this is a made up witch doctor word, the way in which it's used. And it doesn't even belong in a headline on an association for a field of science. It doesn't. We'll just start there. It shouldn't even be here. This word. Okay. No place for transphobia in anthropology. Session pulled from annual meeting program. This was published yesterday, September 28th, 2023. Let's read their article. The AAA and CASCA boards reached a decision to remove the session, Let's Talk About Sex, Baby: Why Biological Sex Remains a Necessary Analytic Category in Anthropology, from the 2023 conference program. This decision was based on extensive consultation. Consultation with who? I bet you know. With activists, with ideologues, with religious woke people. This decision was based on extensive consultation and was reached in the spirit of respect for our values. Is science one of your values? How about biological reality? Are those values at an association for a field of science? Do you value the truth, empirical truth? Do you value science? Apparently not. It was reached in the spirit of respect for our values in order to ensure the safety, the safety and dignity of all of our members. The safety and dignity of your members, you've just you've completely thrown in the garbage the dignity, not just of your members, but of your association and of the entire field of anthropology, like that. You've brought shame upon anybody who's in this field by rejecting science, a science association rejecting science. And you're using this hocus pocus magic bullshit word here, safety. Nobody's unsafe by talking about biological sex. This is a lie. This is manipulative. And Josh Slocum, who we're going to have on Monday, I'm sure would say, this is a tactic of people with cluster B personality disorders to lie like this, to imply that to speak about reality is unsafe for people, could cause harm. It's a tactic of abusers. You're gaslighting in a scientific association, in the very statement. But you have to, because you can't defend this any other way. You can't. You have to pretend like, oh, well, somebody's safety is at. Don't be specific though, right? How's their safety? How's their dignity at risk? Talking about biological sex. Can't answer that. And this part here, talk about gaslighting. This decision was made based on as well as the scientific integrity of the program. Really? They're trying to pretend this is what I meant about how social justice can wear whatever mask. It'll wear whatever mask it needs to infiltrate an organization, a company, a hobby group, a church. It'll wear a Jesus mask if it wants to get into your church. It'll try and wear a science mask if it wants to get into your scientific association. They have the nerve to sit here and say that they are canceling a panel about the reality of biological sex and the importance of having biological sex as an analytic category. And they're doing so because of scientific integrity. What? Up is down, down is up. The Bible talks about what you're doing here. Substituting good for bad, bad for good. Up is down, down is up. Woe to you. That's what the Bible would say. Woe to you. Okay. The first ethical principle in AAA's Principles of Professional Responsibility is do no harm. Well, again, harm is a subjective term, right? When you use it the way these witch doctors are using it. Because I would argue it does great harm for a scientific association to pretend like biological sex is a harmful topic. It does great harm for a scientific association, for a branch of science, to reject science and to make a decision to cancel a panel about biological reality because of religion, because of their particular faith, their woke social justice faith. It does great harm to censor discussion of evidence and truth, observable truth. You're a scientific organization. What you're doing here is you are violating your first ethical principle of do no harm. But let's hear you explain how you're sticking to it, that this decision was somehow made to try and uphold that principle. Let's hear what an abusive, gaslighting monster sounds like, who's trying to tell you up is down and down is up. The session was rejected because it relied on assumptions that run contrary to the settled science in our discipline. Wow. If the Anthropological Association of America were a spouse, they would be an abusive spouse. It says the session was framed in ways that do harm to vulnerable members of our community. It commits one of the cardinal sins of scholarship. Look at that. Cardinal sins. This is a moral statement they're putting out. This is a moral, religious statement. And deep down, the person writing this knows that's true. That's why they're appealing to the concept of sin. It commits one of the cardinal sins of scholarship. It assumes the truth of the proposition that it sets out to prove, namely, that sex and gender are simplistically binary. They are simplistically binary. That's the settled science. And that this is a fact with meaningful implications for the discipline. Do you see what's happening here? This is a science association trying to undermine science. Since they're talking about in terms of morality and they're bringing in religion, I'm going to bring in my religion to observe what's happening here for a second. And from a Christian perspective, this is the work of the devil in the world, to substitute bad for good, good for bad, to say up is down, down is up. But if you don't want to use a religious metaphor, then the abusive spouse one will do fine. An abusive spouse who tells you up is down, down is up. That you're imagining things. That what you see right in front of your eyes is not happening. Liars. Here we go. It continues. Such efforts contradict scientific evidence, including the wealth of anthropological scholarship on gender and sex. You see what also they're doing here? They're not allowing anyone to even have a dialogue about this subject that is now contentious, which should not be contentious, but it is, because this religion has infiltrated every facet of society and every field, including the scientific fields now. Now it's become contentious because you've got all these woke, brainwashed, religious zombies running around. But instead of letting them debate it and discuss it at the conference, they're saying, you can't discuss it. We've decided. In our statement, we're telling you what you should believe. We're telling you what truth is here. We're telling you that there's no such thing as binary sex. Bullshit. You're telling us that in this statement. Nobody gets to talk about it, right? You apparently have a wealth of evidence, right? But you can't be bothered to bring it to a debate or discussion, even though just trust you, right? You've got a wealth of evidence. You've said so in a press release that you have a wealth of evidence. So why bother presenting it or having a discussion about it, right? Because you've got a wealth of evidence. This is manipulative. Forensic anthropologists talk about using bones for, quote, sex estimation, not sex identification, a process that is probabilistic rather than clearly determinative and that is easily influenced by cognitive bias on the part of the researcher. So what they're doing here is they're using the fact that it's called sex estimation. When an archaeologist, for example, looks at bones and determines the sex, and they're saying, look, we call it sex estimation because you can't 100% identify it. You're just going based on their expertise and their knowledge, and they're trying to create doubt where there is none. Around the world and throughout human history, there have always been people whose gender roles do not align neatly with their reproductive anatomy. Yeah, that's true, but their reproductive anatomy is binary. You lying, gaslighting abusers. We're not talking about people, the small fraction of a percent of people who have a reproductive anomaly, who have a genetic disorder. We're not talking about those people. You don't include those people. You don't include the people who are born with 7 fingers. When you're talking about how many fingers people are born with, that's an anomaly. That's a mutation. But they want to include intersex people so they can push an entire ideology that has nothing to do with intersex people. So they can push an entire religion. Yes, there have always been people whose gender roles do not align neatly with their reproductive anatomy. That doesn't change their reproductive anatomy, you assholes. I'm sorry for the language. I'm so sorry. I apologize. This is just really, really crazy. I won't say another, if you've got little ears in the room, I'm really sorry. There's no single biological standard. This is what they say. There's no single biological standard by which all humans can be reliably sorted into binary male, female sex classification. That is a bald face lie. That's a bald face lie. All humans produce gametes. Females, and this is true for mammals, females produce a large gamete, an egg. Males produce sperm, tiny gametes, lots of them. This is an absolute lie. On the contrary, anthropologists and others have long shown sex and gender to be historically and geographically contextual. Oh, deeply entangled and dynamically mutable categories. This is all gaslighting bullshit. The function of the gender critical scholarship advocated in this session, like the function of the race science of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, is to advance a scientific reason to question the humanity of already marginalized groups of people. There's the woke language. Nobody's questioning the humanity of any group. That is an outright lie to try and paint people as bigots for talking about something that's biological fact, which is biological sex. And that you guys only started questioning in the past 10 or 15 years when this religion became trendy. In this case, those who exist outside a strict and narrow sex gender binary. I'm refraining from cursing again. And then it continues. Transgender and gender diverse identities have long existed, and we are committed to upholding the value and dignity of transgender people. We believe that a more just future, there's the social justice language. You know what religion this is. A more just future is possible, one where gender diversity is welcomed and supported rather than marginalized and policed. You know what gender diversity is? Gender diversity is acknowledging that not everyone, not every woman is effeminate and not every man is masculine, and that doesn't mean that women are men. You dumbasses. I'm sorry, I did curse again. I just can't. I need to take a break today with the I'm sorry for the potty mouth. This is makes me so angry to come from a scientific association. This gaslighting witch doctor voodoo. I'm kind of having it's reminding me of a lot of the past few years, the COVID years, with all this voodoo nonsense being pushed on us and in the name of science with these liars. Up is down is up, bad is good, good is bad. These people pushing all this voodoo witch doctor nonsense in the name of science and telling us we were anti-science. And it's like, dude, I've read the studies about masks. I'm not taking a jab because I would like to see longitudinal studies, you know. Don't tell me that's anti-science. It's infuriating. It is. So if this pisses you off, you're not the only one. We're gonna try and find our way out of the anger about it, though. That statement is one of the most disgusting, and I've read a lot of woke statements in the past few years, as you know, but this is one of the most disgusting woke statements I think I've ever read. And I guess it's personally really disturbing to me because of my major. Maybe that's why. I don't know. It's really bothersome. Follow the sciences, Dan Trainer. Mattias Bronson is a good point. I see. Hey, did anyone notice that white cis male didn't really catch on? I found it to be a marvelous way of marginalizing a regular person. Yeah, they do. They, like I said, the up is down is up, good is bad, bad is good. They do a fantastic job of projecting. It's all projection. Everything like a narcissist or a sociopath, like a cluster B person, everything they accuse you of is what they're doing to you, quite obviously. And hey, but it works on some people. Pirate Tomsky. Wait, are you telling me these academics are lying? Yes, they are. Cosmic prankster. I think atheism is partially responsible for this gender weirdness. Well, I do too. That's a whole nother side tangent and discussion, which probably deserves its own video. I do think it's partially responsible. I also think feminism is partially responsible for this. Um, that's why I don't really play the in this sort of in this space that we're in, where we're witnessing this woke revolution around us, this social justice revolution, and those of us who are speaking out about it in all of our different areas and the ways in which we're doing so. Um, One of the ways in which people have done so is to ground their arguments against woke in feminism or in a defense of women. And I don't really do that as much. I guess maybe you could say I've done it sometimes, but I try and stay away from that because that's that's like thinking you can dismantle the master's house with the master's tools, which is an Audre Lorde quote, feminist quote. And I don't think you can do that. I don't think that you can play part of the woke game when it comes to sex or gender and then think that you can destroy all of woke. So some of the radical feminists do this, and the radical feminists make great arguments against this gender BS part of social justice and woke. They make great arguments against it, and they do a lot of great work to push back against it. But sometimes, not all, but sometimes their arguments are based in, this defense of this is oppressive to women and this is bad for women and we need to defend women. And um, I don't like that as much, although that's true. I don't like speaking in those terms of one group because that's what the woke do. That's their own, you know, they do that when it comes to identity groups. So this is bad for everyone, not just women. I don't like speaking in those terms of like, look how this marginalizes women. Although I get it. I understand why people do. Anyway, here, let me put this up. Speaking of radical feminists, I had a couple of tweets about this pulled up. One is Julie Bendel, who's a feminist and a journalist. And she was also, in addition to Colin, she was posting about this, had some stuff to say about it. And you can see because she's feminist, she does ground it in the women thing, which is fine. But so she says, women, yet again, canceled and publicly humiliated for wishing to talk about sex and its distinction from gender. A panel that had been accepted. Actually, I wouldn't say she's grounding it in sex here. The panel was all women. She's just stating a fact. Women yet again canceled and publicly humiliated for wishing to talk about sex and its distinction from gender. A panel that had been accepted at the American Anthropological Association to be held in Toronto in November has now been canceled due to anonymous complaints from trans activists. The panelists have sent an open letter to the presidents of the Canada and U.S. Anthropological Associations who were co-hosting the event. This is the letter from the organizers canceling them. So we just read their official BS statement on their website from the American Anthropological Association. Let's read the letter. This is the letter they sent the panelists to let them know they were canceling. Dear panelists, we write to inform you that at the request of numerous members of the respective executive boards of AAA and CASCA reviewed the panel submission at the request of numerous members. At the request of numerous members, the respective executive boards reviewed the panel submission. Let's talk about sex, baby, why biological sex remains a necessary analytic category in anthropology, and reached a decision to remove the session from the 2023 conference program. The decision was based on extensive consultation and was reached in the spirit of respect for our values, the safety and dignity of our members, and the scientific integrity of the program. The reason the session deserved further scrutiny was that the ideas were advanced in such a way as to cause harm to members represented by the trans and LGBTQI of the anthropological community, as well as the community at large. While there were those who disagree with this decision, we would hope they know their voice was heard and was very much a part of the conversation. Don't worry. While we're censoring you, just know that your voice was heard behind the scenes in private. We allowed you to express your opinions backed by science and actual observable as evidence. We allowed you to do that behind the scenes, behind closed doors. We're not going to tell you who those people were who spoke on the side of objective reality and truth and science, but they were there. But we are censoring them from speaking in public at our conference and bringing any of those facts, to the panel. That's what they're saying here. Isn't that funny? Trust us. Trust us. We heard your voice. We hope we know their voice was heard and was very much a part of the conversation. It's the private conversation behind closed doors. It is our hope that we continue to work together so that we may become stronger and more unified with each of our associations. Going forward, we will undertake a major review of the processes associated with vetting sessions at our annual meetings, and we'll include our leadership in that discussion. Meaning, you wouldn't have made it this far. Next time, we're going to censor you from out the gate. Out the gate. You won't even get on this. You won't even get in the schedule. These monsters. Look at this comment right here. I don't even know who this is, but I agree. This is incredibly depressing. It causes me moments of anxiety and despair to see what is happening in the world. And I'm not even being denied the right to speak at a conference. Their letter is excellent, but I doubt it will change the organizers' minds. He's talking about the letter that the panelists wrote in response. This is their letter. The panelists who've been canceled, who are not allowed to mention biological sex as a reality or mention science at a science convention. They wrote a letter in response. Here's the letter. And I know you probably can't see this on the screen. It's very small writing, so I'll just read this to you. Dear Doctors Ramona Perez and Monica Heller. Open letter regarding the open letter. We are disappointed that the American Anthropological Association and the Canadian Anthropology Society have chosen to forbid scholarly dialogue at the important joint conference themed Transitions to be held in Toronto in November. Our panel, Let's Talk About Sex, Baby, Why Biological Sex Remains a Necessary Analytic Category in Anthropology, was accepted on July 13th, 2023, after the submission was reviewed by the AAA's section program chairs or by CASCA's scientific committee. From the time of this acceptance until we received your letter dated September 25th, no one from the AAA or CASCA reached out to any of the panelists with concerns. Thus, it comes as a shock to all of us that the AAA and the CASCA canceled the panel due to the false accusation that the, quote, ideas were advanced in such a way as to cause harm to members represented by the trans and LGBTQI of the anthropological community, as well as the community at large, end quote. Due to the serious nature of the allegation, we hope that rather than maintaining secrecy, the AAA and the CASCA will share with us and its membership documentation about the exact sources and nature of these complaints and the correspondence that led to this decision. Yeah, you're saying it causes harm. How? You're a science-based organization. Science requires transparency. Show us. Where's the harm? Show us. Be transparent. We are puzzled at the AAA and CASCA adopting as its own official stance that to support the continued use of biological sex categories, e.g., male and female, man and woman, is to imperil the safety of the LGBTQI community. Our panel description, written by Kathleen Lowry, acknowledges that not all anthropologists need to differentiate between sex and gender. One of the abstracts explicitly expresses concerns that ignoring the distinction between sex and gender identity may cause harm to people in the LGBTQI community. No, quote, bones about it. Skeletons are binary. People may not be. Elizabeth Weiss wrote in, so it says in this piece. which was called No Bones About It, Skeletons Are Binary, but People May Not Be, Elizabeth Weiss wrote, quote, in forensics, however, anthropologists should be and are working on ways to ensure that skeletal finds are identified by both biological sex and their gender identity, which is essential due to the current rise in transitioning individuals. So this was part of what was gonna be in their panel. They even have people there arguing that gender identity is a thing and that it's important to figure it out and acknowledging that biological sex and so-called gender identity don't always match up. They even had that in the panel. Kathleen Lowry was key in bringing the panel together and in defining our unifying theme. Our panel included a group of diverse women, one of whom is a lesbian. They say, "Oh, this panel's dangerous to gays and lesbians." There's a lesbian on the panel. You liars. Our panel included a group of diverse women, one of whom is a lesbian. In addition to having 3 fields of anthropology represented in our panel also included anthropologists from 4 countries with 3 languages, an international panel concerned about the erasure of women. Spanish anthropologist Sylvia Carrasco planned to present data that looked at, quote, sex-based oppression, violence, and exploitation, end quote, and the difficulty of addressing these issues when biological sex is disavowed. Yeah, kind of hard to talk about sex-based oppression, which used to be a part of woke. Kind of hard to talk about that if you can't talk about biological sex, when you can't even look at it as a category because it's considered harmful. UK anthropologist Kathleen Richardson's abstract highlighted issues surrounding material disparities between the sexes in the tech industry that are being erased by counting men who identify as trans as women rather than by having more women into the field. Wow. So these are feminists saying, hey, again, like the woke, they do care about the numbers of women in STEM, and I don't. I don't at all. But they care about it, and they're saying, "Hey," and the woke are supposed to care about it, and we can't even keep track of how many women are in STEM because now you're counting men as women. Valid point, feminists. It's true. So it says, francophone Canadian anthropologist Michelle Siwa was to offer an ethnographic account of the ways in which Quebec feminists have organized to document, clarify, and oppose the exploitative surrogacy industry that hides under the guise of equity and inclusion, and in which surrogacy policies which exploit poor women are cynically framed as liberatory. Your suggestion that our panel would somehow compromise, quote, the scientific integrity of the program, end quote, seems to us particularly egregious. Yes, as the decision to I can't pronounce this word. I'm sorry. I feel pretty ignorant that I can't pronounce it. I'm just gonna skip it. Um, the decision to, I guess, get rid of our panel looks very much like an anti-science response to a politicized lobbying campaign. Had our panel been allowed to go forward, we can assure you that lively contestation would have been welcomed by the panelists and may even have occurred between us as our own political commitments are diverse. Instead, your letter expresses the alarming hope that the AAA and the CASCA will become, quote, more unified within each of our associations, end quote, to avoid future debates. Most disturbingly, following other organizations such as the Society for American Archaeology, the AAA and the CASCA have promised that, quote, going forward, we will undertake a major review of the processes associated with vetting sessions at our annual meetings and will include our leadership in that discussion, end quote. Anthropologists around the world will quite rightly find chilling this declaration of war on dissent and on scholarly controversy. It is a profound betrayal of the AA's principle of advancing human understanding and applying this understanding to the world's most pressing problems. What a great letter. And this is signed by Kathleen Lowry, Associate Professor at the University of Alberta, Elizabeth Weiss, Professor at San Jose State University. She's the one who had the piece about sex and gender identity being different. Kathleen Richardson, professor at De Montfort University. Michelle Serrois, I'm probably mispronouncing that, president at PDF Quebec. Sylvia Carrasco, professor at Autonomous University of Barcelona. And Carol Hooven, associate in the Department of Psychology at Harvard University and a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Incredibly depressing. First comment is correct. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to read the whole letter. It's just I find it distressing, like that first comment. I find it depressing, and I'm a person who likes to find humor in everything and try to laugh and maintain joy during deeply chaotic and destructive times. Like, we're living through crazy times. If you watch this show regularly, no matter if you're a liberal, conservative, or politically, who cares? But if you are awake to what's happening in the world, you know what we're living through. We're living through some very chilling times. We're living through the kind of thing that, you know, people will read about. Hopefully, if history is told accurately, we'll read about 100 years from now and be like, that is crazy. I can't believe it got to that point. When things fall apart, right? So it's distressing. We're gonna try and find ways to laugh about it in a second, but here, let me take a break from reading about this. Thank you for some super chats. Thank you, ADL 1982. Good to see you for $1.99. Thank you for being here. Thanks for hanging out. It's good to see your face again. And Pyrotomsky says, "Don't apologize, swear more." This is my resident atheist mod telling me to swear more. You know, in my real life, I do swear a little more than I do on camera, which I've been thinking about. I've heard some sermons recently about swearing that they've given me some things to think about. So my wheels are still turning on that. But on camera, I don't like to as much because there's all different people who listen who, um, you know, don't like that language or who have little kids listening. And so I try, and there's no reason for it a lot of the time. It's just a crutch. And so it's a good exercise to try and talk even when angry without cursing. And then when you do curse, it means a lot more anyway. Like on Twitter yesterday or the day before, I said something to Gavin Newsom, who was just a spineless, lying fool. And I called him an a-hole, but I called him like the word. And it means a lot more because then people are like, wow, you said that. I never hear you use words like that. It's like, well, so save it, use it sparingly if you use it at all. That's the lesson there. Squat and Peace says, swearing puts me in a bad mood, but if I'm already heated up, why not? LOL. Yeah, I'm pretty heated up about this. We're gonna try to calm down about it. Rib Rascal this is usually what I like to do. Shut the front door. Like old sayings like this, I love it, Shut the front door. Well, kiss my grits. Stuff like that. My husband's here, Anthony Garcia Music. Hello, Anthony. He's running some errands today. Okay, so as I said, thanks for allowing me to read the letter. If this burns you up like it does me, you can write to the American Anthropological Association. You can go on Twitter and respond to them and let them know what you think about this. You can, since they've apparently heard from some anonymous number of people about how offensive and harmful it is to talk about biological sex, they're not going to tell us who said that or how many people. But you can go there and you can tell them what you think. This is them on Twitter. Or X. I don't know if I'll ever get used to calling it X. The American Anthropological Association on Twitter, X. It's at American Anthro. And you can see they're plugging Anthro Academy, webinars. Look at this, DEI, right here in the most recent tweet from 2 hours ago. DEI, thoroughly woke, these guys. We're hosting a webinar on the challenges and successes in employing DEI interventions in anthropology departments. Join us for department climate and academic workload in anthropology departments on October 18th. DEI, right there. Woke crap, right in the most recent tweet. Maybe we should get some anthropologists, if there are any anthropologists watching this, on the board. This is one of the tactics we've talked about before. How to defeat this stuff. We need people who run for office, local office, who run for city council, who run for the board of these associations. This is their tweet from a few days ago. AAA members, are you interested in helping shape the future of the association? We're seeking nominations for the AAA board and nominations committee, including secretary, cultural seat, and student seat. Here's the deadline, October 5th. If you're a student in anthropology, or you are an academic or professor in anthropology, why not run for the board? Root these people out, replace them. I've got a couple of other things on this topic I wanted to bring. Human Kirk, hi, late to the party. I don't understand. Has anthropology been the first to become woke like 25 years ago? I don't know if it was the first or not. Probably, and probably cultural anthropology. So there's the two different ones. There's physical or biological anthropology, and there's cultural anthropology. And probably cultural anthropology did become woke 25 years ago. I'll be honest, like with actors and actresses I've tried to not look and see what's happening with anthropology because I didn't wanna be so upset. Like, I was on a show the other night, or I think it was last night. I was on, WD Pro's channel, which you guys should go check it out. It was fun. I just did an interview with him. Mystery Chris and I had him on Wednesday night. He is a Disney expert and just a lovely human being, very intelligent, very profound. I know I keep using that word about him, but that's the best descriptive word for him. And, anyway, I was on his show last night, and Culture Casino was on, and they told me something about Sarah Polley, the actress and director, and how she's, fully woke, and it bummed me out because I've was a fan of hers, and I think I've purposefully tried not to learn anything about her beliefs because I didn't wanna be bummed out, and so I haven't really been following what's going on with anthropology. But yes, this isn't the first thing. Absolutely. I know that without even looking Human Kirk. I know this is not the first transgression. This one is just a big one, and this one caught my eye. And I think it I think it says a lot that the American Anthropology Association is putting out a statement saying biological sex, science, truth, the search for truth, dialogue, asking questions, dissent, none of this is allowed at our conference. Like, that's basically what their statement said, along with a lot of lying and gaslighting to justify it. It's huge. It's is very disappointing. Okay, so I had something else queued up about it. Oh, well, this was the first, I think, as I mentioned, the first person I saw highlighting this and bringing attention to it was Colin Wright. So I just had this queued up so you could see it. We also looked at his Reality's Last Stand Substack. But yeah, if you don't follow him, you should follow him on Twitter. Swipe right. Swipe right. He does a lot about the sciences, about biological sex, about this gender hysteria and this pandemic of supposed trans kids. So he's great. So what do you guys what do you guys wanna talk about? I could rant more about this, but I think I wanna end on something fun. We should talk about something fun and silly. We could talk about the holidays coming up. Andrew Joyner, thank you very much for the super sticker of £2. I appreciate you supporting the channel. 2 lira, I didn't do my joke. 2 lira. Pirates got Colin Wright's Twitter handle in there. Sarah Polly, says Davina. Yeah, so, last night on WDW Pro show, we were talking about Disney is rebooting Bambi. They're doing a live action version of Bambi, and Sarah Polly is set to direct, and so that's how she came up because I said, "Oh, well, I like her," and Culture Casino informed me that she's gone very woke, which I'm like, "I don't wanna know." Isn't it a bummer when somebody, like, it's like, "Ah, yeah, I guess that makes sense, they would be, right?" Dan Trainer, let's talk about pies, apple and blueberry. Look, I don't know if you know Dan Trainer, but you are stepping into it with me because my favorite is sweet potato pie, and actually, what great timing because 'cause I'm gonna have Josh Slocum on Monday, and Josh Slocum, hates sweet potato pie and hates sweet potatoes. He calls them the devil's tuber, and I haven't talked with him in a while. Oh, I did talk to him the other day off camera, but I haven't talked to him in a while, and so thank you for reminding me about pies, 'cause I think it might be a good thing to either make a sweet potato pie before he comes, or we could do something just to have fun with him, have some sweet potatoes in the background. He's a big hater on sweet potatoes. I don't know why, I don't get it. They're delicious. The devil's tuber, yeah, that's what he calls it. Sweet potato pie is less I think it's a Southern thing, and, um, a lot of Southern culture things also get called, like, Black culture and Black things, so I also know Black people claim sweet potato pie and say but, um but it is a Southern thing. Here, let me show you something else that's Southern that's pretty funny, since we're just being silly now. Uh, I don't know if you guys saw Kamala Harris took a picture with collard greens the other day. Did you guys see this? And people, I think, were rightly pointing out, I don't know if that's just a coincidence. She just randomly took a picture of collard greens. Seems like she's pandering to Black people because collard greens is one of those things that gets called a Black food. Although correctly, I would argue it's just a Southern food, maybe a cracker food, right? Um, but I don't think it's a Kamala Harris. Did she grow up eating a lot of collards? I don't think so. I'm skeptical. Uh, anyway, she posted a picture with collard greens, and people, I think, were correctly saying, "Hey, this reminds me of Hillary Clinton's hot sauce in my bag moment," where Hillary Clinton was trying to pretend like she carries hot sauce in her bag. I don't believe that. I don't know. Maybe she does. She is from Arkansas, but, it seems I'm pretty cynical about that kinda stuff, like, I think, "Oh, you're pandering." Anyway, here's the picture. So I thought it was funny because then we were at the grocery store and I was like, "Oh, let's take a picture with collard greens." We were buying veggies. Look at this. Who among us hasn't posed with collard greens? There's Kamala Harris's picture on the left. There's my picture on the right. So I was trying to get a thing going because I thought it was funny. Post your collard green selfie. And I thought that would be kind of hilarious just to poke a little fun at her and her pandering. And as far as I've seen, nobody's posted their picture yet. If you have a picture of collard greens, if you have collard greens in your fridge, go get a selfie with it, post it, hashtag I pose with Kamala, I pose with collards. I think it's pretty funny. Michael says she's in California, they don't have them. Yeah, they actually it's not very common there. There are a few restaurants. When I lived in LA, there were a few kind of like Southern style restaurants, and they were almost like you would go to an ethnic restaurant in um like another part of town. Culture depends on where you're at, right? Like if you're in the South, well, you say, "Oh, I want Chinese food," you go have Chinese food, or like "Oh, I want to have Mexican food," you go have Mexican food. But but you don't say I want to have Southern food or I want to have Black food because that's just everywhere. That's what the food is in South Carolina, where I'm from. It's all Southern food. It's all so-called Black food. But in Los Angeles, that was a thing that was a choice you could make. You could say, "Oh, I want to go have Southern food," and you would go to, I think, like a really popular one. I'm trying to remember. I think it was called Aunt Kizzy's Back Porch or something like that. It was like a really good soul food restaurant. But you in Los Angeles, you would choose to go there as if you were choosing to, because it's not the normal food. It's not what everybody eats. So you're right. Even this, when I first went to Los Angeles, I thought it was so funny. If you went to the grocery store, they put stuff like collard greens and okra in the exotic food section of the produce section. Isn't that funny? If you're from the South, like South Carolina, that's hilarious because it's like okra. You eat okra with every meal. Every meal. It's not in the exotic food aisle. Yeah. Soul food, right? That's what it gets called. But it's Southern food. Or, yeah, gumbo. Shrimp and grits. That's a total South Carolina thing. Shrimp and grits is good. Vermont Cheddar says, I eat okra and moonshine for breakfast. Very Southern. Here, I'll stop sharing that. Yeah, but Twee Girl, we making you hungry? Look, the holidays are coming up. We're moving into October, which is my favorite month. But then after that, Thanksgiving, of course, I'm already thinking about Thanksgiving and Christmas and having friends and family over, and the best South Carolina Southern foods that I don't eat as much of that kind of food anymore because a lot of it is it could put some pounds on you. It's not very good to eat it every day, but we did eat this way all the time at pretty much every meal. But I will eat this way for holidays and stuff, and it's always fun to make, sweet potato pie, of course, um, the fried okra, of course, mac and cheese casserole, not mac and cheese casserole, amazing. Um, some of the ones I'm not as big of a fan of, but that we would always have at family stuff would be the congealed salad, or they would call it the pink stuff. My mom called it the pink stuff, and it's like a Jello salad mixed with like marshmallows on top, and they suspend in the Jello chunks of fruit cocktail, like different fruit chunks, and it's viewed as a salad. It's a dessert, and sometimes they sprinkle nuts on top. Uh, Baked mac and cheese with smoked ribs. Yes. Nah, there's no carbs or fat in that. Yeah, right. Sorry, human Kirk, getting hungry. Yeah. Look, it will hit the spot, soul food, but yeah, you shouldn't eat it every meal. Cornbread, deviled eggs, of course. Deviled eggs with mustard. South Carolina uses a lot of mustard. In fact, even the barbecue in South Carolina, our barbecue is like mustard based, shredded barbecue, and North Carolina's is like vinegar based. It's really different than Texas barbecue. But the deviled eggs have mustard in them. The potato salad has mustard in it. When my husband thinks I'm weird because I eat mustard on fries. Like, we were in Europe, every country we go to, I try to learn the word for mustard so I could ask for it. And occasionally there was one guy, because there's a lot of Middle Eastern restaurants in Germany. There was one guy, he had no idea what I was talking about. It's like, I was using the German word too, and he didn't know what I meant. So this is pretty funny. But speaking of Hillary and hot sauce in her bag, I do keep some little hot sauce packets in my bag. But what I did get it when I was in, and I found I needed in Europe, was a big tube of mustard. So now I have a tube of mustard in my bag, just because they didn't have it. It wasn't very common. And a Southerner needs their mustard. French mustard, any kind of mustard. I like all of it, except I'm not a big fan of honey mustard. That one doesn't taste like a real mustard to me. I like uh, I like the yellow mustard. Probably my favorite's just the plain old yellow mustard, but the Dijon, the whole grain, French, all of it. It's amazing. Yes, thank you, American yellow mustard is God's gift. Yeah. Which hot sauce? Cholula. Our Lady Cholula is the best one. I don't trust anybody who says a different one. Okay, Coleman's mustard. Do you have any Grey Poupon? I haven't seen those commercials in forever. Yeah, I love spicy mustard. I thank you for Mont Cheddar. Tabasco sauce is too watery. I don't even think it counts. Honestly, I don't get it. Cholula has some weight and heft to it as a hot sauce. Sriracha also very. I do like sriracha. I didn't start eating that until I lived in Los Angeles, but it's very good. Anyway, if you're cooking greens, since we were talking about Southern food and collards, I don't know how you guys like to cook them, but in South Carolina, my grandmas everybody would cook them with like lots of lard, and it made what could be a healthy vegetable very unhealthy. Although I'm sure you know, if you like fat back and stuff and bacon and it was it was pretty tasty for people who enjoy that taste. I just didn't like it as a kid when it was cooked with all that stuff. And so, but I do like the fact that she would mix her greens. So I still mix my greens. So if I'm doing greens, like for a holiday, I am going to do collard greens and mix them with turnip greens and mustard greens. And then, if you don't want to cook with the lard or, make it really fattening, the best recipe I've found for them is to use tomato juice and an onion and just let it simmer on the stove. Put all the greens in there together, just a mess of greens with tomato juice, or you can do some veggie bouillon, some veggie broth or chicken broth if you eat meat, and then slice a whole onion and put it in there and just let it all cook together. And that's a much healthier way to cook all your greens if you don't want them greasy and full of fat. But if you want them the old-fashioned way, you got to cook them with the lard. And they put like meat in there, bacon, or yeah. I'm not into, I hate bacon. Okay, I think we've just been hanging out and talking about food, and I'm getting hungry as well. I think I'm going to wrap this up. Thanks for hanging out with us and giving us time to talk about something else after that really upsetting topic at the beginning. I do hope you'll share the video though if you liked it, and leave a comment if you like the channel and want to help us out. And hope you have a good weekend. I will see you guys on Monday, 1:00 Central Time. We're going to be here live with Josh Slocum from the Disaffected podcast. And I hope you'll come and hang out with us and bring your sweet potatoes and your sweet potato jokes to needle them a little bit in the chat if you come. We'll see you then, and hope you have a good weekend. Oh, and get this, a bit of good news. Two Sisters and Some Yarn. I'm going to get to meet her in person. And so I'm talking to her after this. And I'm pretty excited about it. So that's cool. Two Sisters and Some Yarn, one of the mods in the chat. Going to get to see her. So that's pretty cool. Okay. Have a good weekend. Bye.